excited about this episode, you guys. I have my beautiful client Tasia with us. Tasia is such a badass, but this is the thing. I don't know if I've ever said this about you. You are a very like silent predator. Like you like pop out of the woodworks and you'll be like, look at this amazing shit I did, and then you like pop back into the ground. You're like a fucking like what are those like the groundhogs or the moles thing? That's what Tasia is, you bitches. Like she is literally like, come out, I did all this amazingness, hide back, whatever. I feel like this year has been really kind of crazy for you. So I know I'm obviously not gonna do like a massive introduction of who you are because we'll share all your socials. But like we've known each other what, 8-9 months now?
Yes.
8-9 months? Okay. What was going on in your world when you came and found me? Like, give me a little bit of background on your story.
Yeah, so much was going on in my world. So I work in higher education and I live on a college campus. So I'm living with students, doing work with them. And when I first found you, this is like chaotic. When I first found you, I was at another institution that literally was crumbling. Like I didn't know if I was going to have a job the next day. Like it was that bad. So I remember going on Instagram and I'd been following you for a minute though. So like I had been like watching you for a minute, one of those like lingerers, those quiet folks that were watching you.
I know, you popped out of the fucking work. You're like popped out, you're like, hi, I'm ready, and then like disappeared. I was like, okay, all right. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, I know right now, especially considering everything going on in my life, like I was like, I just need to get into Ashley's world immediately. I don't care what it takes. I don't know what the heck is going to happen, but I'm going to go into it like that.
Yeah.
So during that time, like when literally I was looking at the school and I said, not only would I lose my job, I would lose my housing, lose my benefits, like all of those things. I was just like, let's just take the fucking plunge and like risk it. Like I do not care. So around that time is when I messaged you and I was like, hey, I would love to do. I think we started off with a private intensive. Now I'm working with you long term, and I'm like,
I know it just like worked out. Are you since I know personality? I feel like it's interesting. So I'll share a little bit. Tisha actually messaged me. What was that like a couple weeks ago? And you're like, hey, I just want to extend working with you. And it was like in the midst of like the most chaotic night of your life. So like the week is insane. And you're like, I just want. And I'm like, is she good? Like, and this is the second time you've like made a big investment in yourself in the midst of like chaos. Is that a personality thing? Is that like how you like where did that come from?
I think I'm a very futuristic person. So in my head there's chaos happening and I'm like, well, this shit isn't forever. So like let me make sure I'm setting myself up for success in the future when I know this chaos isn't going to be happening. So right now it's so funny that you say that because when there's chaos happening, I'm like, what is future Tasia like looking like? Let me just act on that instead of so being locked in on what I'm looking like right now. So that's it might be a personality thing, but it's also just that futuristic focus of like this is not forever and I know that, so let me make sure I lock in on something to make sure that I am set up for success in the future.
Are you like a control freak at all?
Okay, am I a recovering perfectionist? Is that what control freaks say? Maybe.
I was asking because sometimes when I feel like there's chaos, I'm like, all right, I'm going to move towards it like fuels me to move towards the goal faster. So I was thinking about how I react sometimes when I'm like, all right, I feel like I don't really make big decisions out of like a fear or like I need to get rid of the thing. Like I'm like very accepting of like there's good and bad and there's movement, whatever. But I make a lot of really big decisions, not necessarily when things are all good and not out of I want to fix it, just in a like, I'm going to now take more control. Like it pushes me to be like, no, like I got this. I don't know. Like I was just thinking about that. Like if you do the same thing a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like foundationally, because especially if like there is a lot of chaos happening, like for example, when that school was closing down and I was like, you know what? Whatever the frick happens, I can literally be like, I can have control over one portion of things, but everything else around me, I'm like, we'll see what the heck happens then. But what happened was I ended up finding a new job within a month of like that school closing.
Yeah.
So we're all dead. We're all dead.
Can you tell me a little bit about, like, for people who are listening, I do want to get a little bit of your background on higher education and what your purpose of your business is, because I actually love Tisha's business and what it's about. But I do want to ask you, like, there's a lot of people that I think wait for good timing. They wait for things to feel safe. They wait for, oh, like, I'm going to invest once, like, I actually made a post. It's coming out on Friday. I'm going to tag you in it. I'm like, this is Tasia to a T. But I literally said, there's so many people who wait until, like, the check engine light's on to be like, oh, shit, like, should I maybe get gas or can I make it home? And then, like, the moment they do it over and over again, but then the moment that they don't actually make it home, they're like, I'm never going to do this again. It's a very reactive approach to, like, life. And I think a lot of business owners, they emulate that in the way that they operate businesses. But I think it's so important to be the person that when their tank is like at half full, they're like, I'm going to proactively go get gas now. And I literally made a post about this because it's such a differentiator of like the successes. And I think that the reason you can be a groundhog is because you don't really make excuses for why you can't like move forward. So what's your thought process, I guess, when you're going through difficult times and you're like, I'm going to choose to do something now, even though like there's a lot of unknown going on? Do you have a thought process? Is it just inherent? Like, what does that look like?
I do think it stems from, so I'm a first generation college student. So I worked 7 jobs to pay my way through college. Did not get help from my parents.
Huh?
Like,
Yes, great.
yes,
Yes, I love
that,
that.
that's just who
Love
I
that.
am to a T. So like I remember ever since like going into high school, in high school, we had a college advisor who was like, you shouldn't go to college because you can't afford it because you can't. And I said, oh, fuck that. I'm just going to go and like prove you wrong.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, my
Oh,
college advisor walked me through every single reason why I shouldn't go. And then I went and I was like, what the hell? Like, this is not bad. So worked 7 jobs and literally said, I know what the end goal is here, and I'm just gonna lock in on that. Like, I'm not gonna, and that's the same thing that I do now. So when shit is happening, I sit there and I'm like, what is the end goal here? Like,
yeah.
I've worked 7 jobs, was going to school full time. Literally, the year I worked 7 jobs, sophomore into junior year, and then they cut my hours in half because they're like, you're doing way too much. I earned the best grades ever those 2 years because I was so
Mm,
locked in. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This
yep.
is how I'm moving through the process. So in chaos, I low key feel like I thrive in it. Is that a good thing? Who knows?
I always used to say in college, the semesters I cried the most, I usually had the best grades. Like I was like, there was something about like I just pushed myself just, I mean, usually a little bit too much, just enough where I'm
Yeah.
like, I was forced to kind of expand. I always think like investments and things that push you expand you, and then you have more
Mhm.
capacity. I feel like that's what you do. You push yourself to the point where your capacity just naturally increases.
Exactly. And that's truthfully, actually, like that's my thought process where I'm like, I know this shit isn't forever, but two, also, this is just showing up in my life to be able to have that little bit of growth that I need. I probably asked for it at some point, probably journaled about it, probably talked about it with somebody, and now it's just like, well, here it is. What are we going to do with it? And
Yeah.
we always just push past those things.
Okay, I would need to ask about this advisor. So, how did your advisor know you couldn't? Did you tell her? Like, how did she? Was it an assumption? Like, can you give me a little bit of background on this advisor situation? Because I've never heard of an advisor telling. I like the financial responsibility. I think we need to tell more kids that are maybe not as ambitious like you. Like, hey, you don't need to go to like my cousin
Yeah.
literally went to the most insane. Her school is like 40K a year, and she's like wanted to teach and basically make 15K a year. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I wish more advisors and parents were like, no, please don't put yourself 200K in debt for a job that's only ever going to make you 30K for sure. But I've never actually heard of an advisor telling someone like really like very intently telling them like don't go to college, you can't afford it. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, so I grew up in a town that is very prestigious. There's 5 colleges in the area.
Oh wow, okay.
5 colleges in the area, all except for maybe one of the actually 3 of them are private schools and then the rest were state schools. And I knew I wanted to go to state school. I wasn't like stressed about a private school or anything like that. But when I gave my list over to where I wanted to attend, she was like, tell me about your family life. What's the background? Literally had
Whoa.
me walk through all of these things just by seeing me. What's your family life like? Okay, interesting. Did any of your family go to college? Like all of that, asking those questions. And then she said, I don't think any of these colleges you should go to. And I was like, oh, great decision. And we had to go through that process. We had to meet with the college advisor, which was so weird to be able to apply to the colleges that we wanted to. So met
Sure.
with her and then applied to the colleges anyway.
This is just like so is it was it like a race like where a race thing like what was the I'm so confused, is that what you were assuming?
That's what I was assuming. But here's the thing. Oh, well, actually, one, I'm assuming this. Two, also, other friends of mine who are also BIPOC literally were like, she told me the same thing. But I know that their families, they had family members that went to college. They had family members that were making good money.
Mm,
So I was sitting there and I was like, how come she told a lot of us the same thing? But then I had my other friends who weren't BIPOC saying, yeah, she told me I could get into like Amherst College or Harvard or X, Y, and Z. And I was like, she told me quite the opposite. Interesting.
that like
So
so sad. How did that like did you did that fuel you? Did it hurt you? Like, what was that experience?
I think at the beginning, I remember sitting there being like, maybe I'm really not cut out for it. Like college is not for me because my mom like went to college for a little bit. My dad went to, but like none of us really graduated from a 4-year institution. So I was like, well, maybe that's it. And then I remember sitting there and being like, fuck that. Like that's not it. Like, no, it's not. So I applied and I said, based off what I get into, that will kind of determine if I'm going to go or not. And I got into every single one of the college I applied to except for two I was waitlisted at. And I was like, I went to Framingham State, worked all 4 years, graduated like as one of the top of my class and just left. And I really actually wanted to go back to that high school and be like, look
Yeah,
what I did.
oh, it's so crazy. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I talk a lot. So I paid for anyone who's listening. Like I paid for my own school. Was very adamant on that. A different situation. My parents they were in a really good financial situation, but my parents were older. They waited. My dad was over 40 when he got married. So
Mhm.
when my dad lost his job when we were younger, like it was very hard to get a job again because he was, already at an older age. Like they assumed he was going to retire in a couple years. So my
Right.
dad kind of at that point had that aha moment of like everything we worked for, it felt like it was taken away, even though like we didn't
Mm.
lose anything. I think just that he felt like a failure, or I don't really know all the details. We don't talk about it in depth, but he was like, Ashley, if you want to go to college, you have to pay for it. And I actually remember I was like going into college. I had just gotten accepted at Missouri State. I already had like a year and a half saved for, and I was at church, and I don't know why this, like I've had many interactions, like but this one interaction, I was just talking to this guy and I remember he's like, oh yeah, my son's a junior, like, oh, the student loans and whatever. I was like, I'm not gonna have student loans. I was like, I'm gonna graduate debt free. And he's like, yeah, that's probably never gonna happen. Like you can't do it. And I remember being like, just because your pussy ass son cannot work as hard, like I was like, fuck you. And I remember I've seen him since then, and I kept wanting to be like, yeah, so I graduated debt free. Like, how's your son? Like, by the way, I want to be very clear. Every time I say this, I have no issue with student loans. I have no issue with taking them. Some people need them. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I was told by my dad if I took out student loans, I would fail him. Like that was a failure move.
Mm.
And so I had to not only go to school, like there was never an option of that. Like that was not that was never not on the table. That was kind of always like, you're going to go to college. I always wanted to go to college, assumed I needed to go to college. But I just remember him being like, oh yeah, like that's, you're never going to work hard enough for that. And I was like, you can tell me I'm stupid. You can tell me I'm ugly. You can even tell me I'm fat. That's what like high rise jeans are for. But you cannot tell me I don't work hard. Like that is the one thing in life. You are not
Mm.
going to tell me I don't work hard. And that is like the one, it just made me so mad. And because I knew I was not the smartest. I was not the kid that like got the best grades or anything. But I worked the hardest in school. I went to every class. I had perfect attendance in high school and in college. Like I was that like hustler because I was like, I want to always go and be like, if I put in 100% effort, if my results don't give it, I can never be like, I could have done more. Like that was always like my fear.
Yes.
So I don't know. It was just as funny as you were talking, like, yeah, I know this exact guy at my church that I went back to. And I want to be like, you fueled me almost to be like, fuck you for not believing in me. I
Exactly.
just like, what a crazy thing to have her do that. Did your parents always want you to go to school? Like, was that something they aspired? Is that something you wanted for yourself? Like, where did the desire for college come from?
I really think it came from just being in high school itself, and I had really good mentors who were teachers that actually looked out for me, which was really, really important. So I remember this one teacher, her name is Miss Abbott. She was like, I told her, I was like, oh, I'm not going to college. Like after I had that conversation with the advisor, and she was like, what the fuck? Why?
Yeah.
Like, do you not? And it was a sociology course, which is what I ended up majoring in. And she was like, do you not see everything you've done throughout this whole entire year? Like, I'm confused as to why you wouldn't. Like, where did that come from? So a lot of them low key kind of like spoke life into me. And I sat there and I was like, well, maybe I really should go. So I was always at this dissonance. There was always like this level of like, do I go or do I not? But my family, like my mom wanted me to go to community college, which is nothing wrong with community college. She was just like,
Right.
go to community college, stay home, and then
Save
decide if you want.
money. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
like my home life at that time, like I was very much taking care of a lot of things at home and then taking care of a lot of things at school. So I was helping family pay rent. I was doing a lot of different things. And I was like, I feel like I need the separation and I need to go somewhere and find my own autonomy. So that's ultimately why I chose to go to a 4-year institution where I could live on campus. It was like an hour and a half away from home.
Yeah.
But my mom sobbed the whole hour and a half there. She was like, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? I'm like, girl, I promise you, you'll be okay. I think you'll be good.
So
So,
you were taking care of your own college, you were working. Were you also helping with your family situation and stuff as well?
yeah, so like at the time, so my sister has this job where over the summer, she works at another college and they like don't pay their employees over the summer. Like once you're done working, you're done. So I worked a position where they paid us even if we weren't working in the summer. And it was really tough because rent obviously is expensive and like food
Mhm.
is purchasing food. So I would send money home all the time to be like, hey, if you need this, like here it is. So I was paying for my college, sending money home, and then also trying to like pay for myself to be able to eat and things of that sort as well. So it was a lot. It was a lot, my 4 years there.
Did you enjoy college? Did you get anything out of college? Like, was it just hustle? Like, what do you remember of that experience?
I honestly enjoyed college. I feel like I found, so I actually led a lot of teams when I was in college. So my first year in college, I was like, I just need a job to get through it. So I worked the front desk at like one of our tutoring centers on campus. And like, I was just like, I'm going to work front desk, do my homework, mind my business. Then my supervisor at the time was like, you'd be a great resident assistant. And I was like, ick, don't tell me that. Like, I don't think I would be a great resident assistant. Applied for the position
You
and
need an amazing resident assistant. What the fuck? That's your perfect RA. Like, you scream RA.
that's so funny because literally, if you told me that, I'd be like, no.
Like,
Like,
you're a bitch. Don't ever talk to me again. No, you like scream RA. You scream RA.
that's hilarious. Oh, now I'm gonna like tell folks that because
Well, I
that.
was an RA. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Well,
What?
I was like, I'm going to graduate debt free. So I remember my junior, so it was my senior year, which is also really awkward, like to do your senior year. And I was in a sorority, and like sorority girls didn't do RA stuff. So we did like my theme of my floor, was Legally Blonde and then Vineyard Vines. Like everyone else was like Mickey Mouse and like dogs, and I was like Lily Pulitzer. Like it was like a whole thing. And we had a hashtag. It was called Rush Shannon 3 because we were our own sorority.
Yep.
I crushed it, but let me tell you, like those bitches got in my way, and I'd sit them down, like fucking get in your room, don't ever talk to me again. But there was like a weird respect thing. But yeah, I was an RA my senior year, and it helped me graduate debt free.
Oh,
But you like, I didn't scream RA, you scream RA. So like,
that's
just
clear.
getting back to that, like that is, if I can be like you crush.
No, that's so. I did not know that, and that's the thing. Like, I never know who when I say RA or resident assistant.
Oh,
People
I
are
knew.
like,
I was like,
what is
check.
that?
I saw you walking through doing the hall checks. Yeah, like I knew. I was like, I got it.
I remember everything, doing the rounds of the building, all of that stuff. I was an RA. I was an orientation leader. Like,
Lexi and I were RAs together. That's how we met.
are
Did
you
you? Oh my god, wait, Lex! So my assistant Lexi, for anyone who's listening, she's just probably like laughing. She's probably literally watching this episode laughing about this. Lexi was a sophomore, I was a senior, and she was the only, not no offense to RAs, but sometimes RAs are hit or miss on people.
Yeah.
She was the only person who didn't look like maybe she sat in a room alone and like read books in a corner and didn't talk to people. So I like went to the orientation. I was like, pick my poison, and she was. I was like, she looks nice. So I just sat next to her and we became best friends.
That is the best.
Isn't that crazy?
That's so cool. See,
Yeah.
that's
Isn't
so
that
incredible.
weird?
Oh, I never know who know, and that's
Yeah,
a story I did not know about you. So like, that's
I know.
so.
Well, you're talking. I'm like, this is so crazy. So you were an RA. Did you do it like multiple years? It was probably really helpful for the financial pieces. It's such a like anyone who even thinks about doing it, the financial piece that I do have a lot of women in college that listen to this. I know it's not necessarily the cool person job. The leadership from that was nuts. Changed my life.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. When I was an RA my sophomore year. So funny story is I was waitlisted to be an RA. So they were like, I don't
Oh,
know.
there was in demand. Okay, got it. It was in
Yeah.
demand. Oh my
And
god.
literally, I was like, oh, I don't know what to do now. Like, I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't want to live with anyone. Like, there was just a whole thing that I was going through. Literally, the RD, the resident director, calls me up and is like, can you come to my office at this time? And I'm like, yeah, her name was Jess. And Jess sits me down. She goes, you were only waitlisted because we were trying to figure out what gender this floor was going to be. And if it was a women's floor, we
Hmm,
knew we were going to hire you. And it's a
got
women's floor. So got the position. So sophomore all the way up till senior year. Senior year, I became head RA. So I was like overseeing a group of 16
wow.
RAs and 50 security desk attendants my senior year.
Wow.
So all the leadership skills, like that's what really locked me in where I was like, oh, I'm gonna probably do this, be some sort of leader. I don't know for the rest of my freaking
Yeah.
life. And that's what got me into being an RD, where I was an RD for 4 years. And then now I oversee orientation and transition programming at another college. So,
I love that. I feel like that's such like a it's funny. I know you're probably like, bitch, why did you say that I'd make a perfect RA? You just have that very like inviting energy. I think RA is like this is the thing that I was talking about. I'm watching This Is Us or this is us. Yeah, This Is Us.
yep.
I almost said the name of the show wrong, even though I've watched this every night for the last 3 months. But anyway, I was watching an episode where they were doing like the flashbacks, and then I'm in high school, and I was just thinking about my own high school and college experience, and I was sitting next to one of my friends, and he was talking about like a really difficult time. He's like, "Yeah, I got to this new school, and I had to sit." And I literally looked at him. I was like, "Yeah, I actually ate my lunch in the bathroom." And he's like, "You?"
Mm,
And
yeah.
he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, and then when I went to college, it kind of gave me this opportunity to find my own voice because I wasn't necessarily in this environment that was gifted, like handed to me. It was one that I chose. I could kind of create my own path. And I think a lot of people assume that I, was really cool maybe in high school or whatever. Like I would definitely have a preppy vibe sometimes that I think makes people think that I had a good ride. I was a softball player. I threw discus. Like I was not a cool kid in high school, but I really found my voice, I think, in college. And even though I don't necessarily think I had it all figured out, I think college is such an interesting time because if you have the right people around you, it really allows you to start to ground yourself. I think in high school, you kind of feel like you're just an air bubble, like kind of flying around trying to figure out what works. And there's a grounding energy that I think happens in college that if you have the right mentors and support, you are really good at that. And I think that that's what you really love. Like, even when you talk about your clients and stuff, the way that you talk about it is in a way of like, I want people to feel like security and safety. Like, it's just a very interesting perspective. And now hearing your journey, I'm like, it connects. I see the
Yeah.
connection of like the higher education and your business. So tell us how you got into the business because you do all these amazing things. And you're like, I just want to launch a business on top of that. How did that start?
Honestly, it was around COVID time where I sat there and I was actually serving as a resident director. I was at SUNY Brockport in New York.
Yeah.
And what was I making? I was making like 28K a year, like sitting there, like, what the heck is going on? I don't even know if I want to be doing this, but I loved empowering students and empowering student leaders specifically.
Yeah.
Building teams is something I really love to do. But I don't know if I ever told you this. My first business wasn't coaching or like anything of that sort. I actually used to do speaking engagements at colleges and universities.
I don't know
And
if
I
I knew that. That
no,
makes complete sense too. That's so on brand.
that's what I still do some of that, but a lot of it was grounded in like diversity, equity, inclusion work. So
Yeah.
I had family they were actually incarcerated, so that's why they couldn't get jobs or anything like that.
Okay.
So I would talk about that in colleges and universities and be like, listen, these students exist at your school and like this is how you can support them because I was that student. So I would talk about that all over colleges and universities and then randomly companies started finding me and being like, we saw your speaking engagement at this college. Can you come to our company and talk about it? And I was like,
Amazing.
sure. So the first company, like they were like, we'll pay you $500 for the hour. And then I was making like 3K an hour, like just speaking to all
Yeah.
these different companies and orgs. And I loved doing that. But I quickly learned once COVID happened, I was like, okay, I want to do more virtual work.
Mm,
So once that hit, I was sitting there and I was talking. There was a lot of students who were BIPOC students, queer students who were coming up to me being like,
yeah.
thank you for coming here. Like my college needed this.
Yeah.
And I was like, then there has to be a need for this in other areas.
Mm,
So ended up helping content creators, which is so interesting, launch their own TikTok, Instagrams, build communities grounded in empowerment that's true to their identities. And then a lot of those creators wanted to actually provide services, which is why this shift happened, where I work with
mm.
service providers now and helping them create online services while they work their 9 to 5s. Because I want people to know you don't have to quit your 9 to 5 to be a successful entrepreneur. It does not have to happen right now.
That's so
So
interesting. Did you feel any resistance when you started your business because of the values and kind of the mission behind your business? Like, was that an easy transition? Was it hard?
it was tough, and I definitely got a lot of hate, still do, a lot of hate on social media for the things I was saying, my values, like all of that stuff. And
Mm,
even my family, like they're like, you're the first person to go to college. Now you're the first person to start this business. Like we've never had an entrepreneur in the family. And a
yeah.
lot of them begged me not to start it. And then now they're like, wait, can you help me start mine? So it was a lot. It was a lot of like I had a lot of push and pull. Like I had some people who were saying this is a great thing for you to do and it helped me X, Y, and Z. But then there's other people who are like, this is useless. I don't know why you're doing this on college campuses, and I don't know why you're doing this on social media. And then I was like, you're not for me. I'm going to talk to the people who are feeling really empowered by this.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about, because I think what's really interesting, quick background. So I come from a very diverse area, and I don't think people realize that, because it's like, it's St. Louis, Missouri. Like, how diverse can it be? You probably have a lot of farmers. I think people think I'm like around cows or something. I'm definitely not. But my high school, I remember I didn't really understand it until like middle school. And then you have all these flags, like all these flags of countries represented. And I was always like, oh, this is like normal. I thought it was very normal to go to a very diverse school. We also, all the city students came to our middle school. So I was very used to sitting next to someone who was Black, was Asian, had
Right.
parent. Like, I did not think that was a privileged experience. I thought that was very normal until I was in a church choir and we went to Boston, and I felt this. I like have told this story so many times. I was singing choir songs, and I looked around and I was like, I feel like this is kind of offensive. And people are like, why? And they're like, won't like the Jewish community be like annoyed that we're singing Christmas songs? And they're like, this is Boston. There's no Jewish community. I was like, what do you mean there's no Jewish community?
Yeah.
My school is Jewish. And so when I went to college, Springfield, Missouri, Bible Belt, that was not the experience. And I remember a lot of my friends, I had friends who were gay. I had friends who were going through, some transition. There was a lot of moving parts that I, again, just wasn't phased by. It wasn't necessarily my journey, but like, I was like, people go do whatever you want. People were getting attacked and they were getting bullied. And there was a lot of heaviness happening that I was like, I'm so confused why this is happening. So I think I came from a very privileged upbringing, not in the way of that everyone looked like me, but a privilege of, I was very used to that, where it didn't feel abnormal to be around someone that looked different than me. But I know a lot of people, that's not their experience. So do you feel like when you went to college, was that amplified? When you went and started your business, was it amplified? When was that moment that you kind of felt, did you feel like a fish out of water at any point? Like, did it change in your different environments?
Yeah, it definitely changed in my different environments. I come from, so Amherst, Massachusetts is a very small town, like again,
Yeah.
five college town, and not a lot of people that looked like me. I think we had out of my class, maybe like 30 people of color in my
Yeah.
class when we graduated, and we had a class of like 300 people.
Okay.
So it was like, I
Small.
always, yeah, I always felt like very fish out of water, very much like I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb in any sort of place where I
Mm.
was. So when I went to college, where I went to college is actually 30 minutes away from Boston. So like
Okay. There you go. I did
it's
not know that. Got it. Okay. Got it.
every time you talk, I'm like, wait, are we the same person? I'm confused.
Potentially. Yeah.
But truthfully, at Framingham State, it was like when I first got there my freshman year, I remember being on a floor. And also, I wasn't out then. So I didn't come out as gay
Mm.
until sophomore year, really. And I remember sitting there having all these moments of like, one, who the heck am I? Why do I feel this way? Like, what the heck is going on in my floor? I was one of maybe like four people of color on that floor. The rest were not. So I was sitting there and I was like, this feels uncomfortable. And people started saying pretty racist things outwardly. And I'd be like, do I say
Like,
something?
at you?
At me, at other people on the floor? Or I was like, what did someone say to me? One time they told me I was one of the good ones. Like, oh, like you don't count, you're one of the good ones.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I remember sitting there being like, what the frick does that mean? And I think it was mid semester where I finally had like this realization of, I need to speak the fuck up. Like, I was a quiet person at the very beginning of my college career.
Hmm.
So I remember sitting there being like, I need to speak up about this. So I remember one person said something really racist, and I said, what do you mean by that? And they were like, you know. I'm like, no, I don't. That's why I asked. Like, actually having these conversations with people, and that made people uncomfortable on the floor. So I was a little bit ostracized because they're like, now Tasia's calling people out and like she's that type of black girl and we don't want to hang out with her. She's not one of the good ones anymore. And I ended up finding the multicultural center on campus, and that's where I spent a lot of my time. So in
Wow.
all these different spaces, I was like, it was really tough at the beginning of the year because I was like, who am I in all these different spaces?
Yeah.
And I just realized I just needed to speak my truth. And that's when sophomore year hit. And I was a leader on the campus talking about inclusion, doing all of these things to help people feel included in the campus. And that's when things shifted for me.
Yeah. Do you feel like a lot of the individuals that you work with, is a lot of the support you're giving them around helping them find their voice and being confident in their voice? Because I would assume that, I mean, again, I know I might come from a background of a very, very diverse, but I'm a white woman. I have blue eyes. I live in, middle class America, and now I run a very successful business. So my privilege is my experiences. My existing privilege is the fact that I look the way that I do, and I know that. But like, I could imagine if I get the amount of hate that I have, I can't even imagine if I didn't look this way, like what that looks like. So, can you talk about either your experiences or kind of what other people have experienced that you've mentored and supported?
Yeah, I know my personal experience. I mean, racism happens to me probably almost every day. Like, I hear it every day. People write it every day. And I think, especially in social media, people can hide behind like their account just has no picture and all of that stuff. So it's a lot easier for people to write things like that. And I quickly had to learn strategies and like, I don't know, even just my own self-care like mechanisms to be able to keep pushing through, even when
Right.
people are saying hateful things like that. And that's the stuff I give to my clients. So it's not just about building your online service, it's about showing your face online and what that brings you when you are getting the hate, you are getting the racist things people are saying, or even just I don't know, the homophobic things people are saying, a variety of those things. And I remember like the other day, one of my clients was going live on TikTok and had shared, like, it was just talking about like what they're doing. They're really big into fitness. They want to help other people get fit. And someone had commented something like just nasty, like about their sexuality on the TikTok live. And they like stopped because they didn't know. Like, they were like, what do I get off? And they're like, low key kind of panicking on the live and like logged off. And I was like, okay, like that sucks. So I quickly learned we actually need strategies in the coaching space to deal with things like that. It's not just hate, it is like rooted in a lot of systemic racism, homophobia, all of those good things. And how do you move through that? That's why I do what I do. A lot of it is helping people find their voice, regardless of if people are saying nasty things to you online.
Wow. How has your mission changed since you started your business? Do you feel like it's the same? Has it changed at all or refined at all?
I feel like it definitely I feel like it's refined. Like, I knew I wanted to support marginalized identities and like that could be BIPOC, queer, women, like whoever, right? But it's definitely gotten more grounded in I want people who are marginalized in the world to feel one safe, secure, and that means like financial security. That means like so many of these other things that I wasn't even thinking about until this past like year or two. And I quickly learned the only way, at least this is how I feel, this is my opinion, the only way we're going to have some of that security is by creating our own income. Like,
Yeah.
creating your own income and being able to do something that really is, you find passion in. And I love my 9 to 5, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But also, like, that school situation, if they had closed when I was there, I would have lost my housing, my benefits, my job, and have been kind of SOL, like shit out of luck right there. So,
Ah,
I want everyone to feel like they can create the security themselves because sometimes it feels like the government won't do that for us.
yeah. I really hope you take like clips from this podcast and share it on your social because like I think this gives so much depth to your mission because when I met you, you were like, I want individuals to feel that they have the power to keep their 9 to 5. And I remember being like, thank you, because
Yeah.
I read this post the other day. It was like, I get really annoyed on this, like everyone's just shaming each other online for whatever, but it was kind of like things that I hate coaches saying. It's like, you can't scale one-on-one. You can't do that. And I'm like, I've never believed any of that. I think you can scale one-on-one to $1 million. I think you can have a $500,000 year business or whatever and
Yeah.
work 9 to 5. Like, you don't have to like release. I think there's something that happens when you release your 9 to 5 that gives you a different level of drive because you don't have that security. Like I remember on Shark Tank one time, Barbara went work with someone because they lived with their parents, and they're like, you don't have the drive that someone who was on the streets. I'm like,
Mm.
I agree and also disagree because I think our goal is to like give people better lives and whatever, but that's a whole other topic. But I remember you talking about that. You're like, I want people to feel the ability to build wealth while also maintaining the stability of a 9 to 5.
Yep.
Why is that so important to you?
I think because at the beginning of my journey of starting a business, I was told consistently you have to leave your 9 to 5 to go all in. And I was like, and then like there was a lot of shame, I guess, around that because it was like, if you're not willing to leave your 9 to 5 and take that risk, then you're not someone who takes risks. You're not someone who's going to advance in business. And I was sitting here like, wait, but like I am. I worked 7 jobs in college. Like, I
Yeah.
was doing all of these things. So I quickly learned going all into me is actually just a mindset. So like I'm all in on my business and I can be all like in on my 9 to 5 too.
Yeah.
And I want people to know, because like right now there are people who are saying to me like, "Oh, are you an entrepreneur? You still work a 9 to 5?" I'm like, I literally run a whole business outside of this.
Yeah.
That's what makes you an entrepreneur. Going all in is a mindset. And I wanted people to know, if you're not set up right now in the space to be able to leave your 9 to 5, that is okay. And you still are able to create the business of your dreams. And then now you have the option, long term, you're creating this money outside of it. You have the option, do you want to stay or do you want to leave? And like, I don't think people really get that option very often. Sometimes they're just pushed out of their 9 to 5 because they're fired, the school closes, whatever it is. But when you have that security of you're building something that you know is going to give you that income, you can get fired, laid off, whatever. But you're like, well, look at this. Like,
Yeah.
I was able to save X amount because I started this online service.
Yeah.
So I just want people to be set up for success long term at the end of the day.
I love that. Is there any tips you can give anyone for people who want to start a business or get started that are working 9 to 5? I get a lot of pushback from people. I'm so
Mm,
busy. I can't post consistently. And I'm like, if you wanted to, you would. I do believe that. Now, there's only so many hours in the day, but optimization of small increments of time was like the way that I scaled. And I
yes.
feel like you and I are very similar in that like we milk every fucking second. And even if that means that we milk it at 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. in order to optimize our day, like we do that. What are some things that you would recommend to people who are like, I want to get the business going, but also like I work 50 hours a week. Like, how do I do that?
Yeah, I often talk about how this is like, you'll probably see this in one of my social media posts. I talk about how I turned 60 minutes of crying in my car into $14,000 in 1 year. So
Oh, so good. God, I love that. Love
I
it. I love a clickbaity, like sassy topic. I love it.
it's true, because I remember I was in this job where I literally would sob every day driving to it. And it was like a 50, 60-minute drive there. And I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And I quickly realized the time that I was using to sob in my car, I could probably start recording TikToks. So, like you said, using those little increments of time, like the amount of times I was scrolling for like 25 minutes, 30 minutes,
Right.
where I
You
really
could
could have.
posted 2 videos.
Exactly. Like, if you scroll all the way down to my TikTok, you'll see TikTok videos of me in my car
Yeah.
every single day, because I said, I can cry a little bit and then I'm gonna stop crying and be like, what is my mission? What is my vision? And let's make that shit happen in my car. Like, the car that was breaking down every 6 to 8 months, that's what I was recording TikTok videos in and building my business in. So utilizing those little moments of time, like I tracked literally, well, your phone does it for you, how many times I was like scrolling on TikTok, scrolling on Instagram, ended up being an hour to 3 hours. And I was like, then I'm just going to use those hour to 3 hours to record TikToks or to get crystal clear on my vision, etc.
Yeah.
So definitely optimizing those little bits of time that you think you don't have, especially during lunchtime, that you do.
Yes. There are people that do it every day. There are people that are making millions of dollars also working a 9 to 5. It's not the norm. There's
Yeah.
people that do it. And the reason I always say it's important to share wins and to share our stories isn't to tell people like, I'm here and you're here. It's to remind people what's possible. And I think a lot of your journey has been reminding people like what's possible. Going to college when people told you you couldn't, paying for school, doing all those things, starting a business, working and maintaining it while doing a 9 to 5. Like it's incredibly impressive. And I'm so happy that you came here to share your story today. Like I think a lot of people needed to hear this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is probably one of the best podcasts I've ever been on.
Are you fucking kidding? Was that even a question? Like, what do you mean? Like, of course it was. Like, absolutely it was. I feel that. Lexi also is going to love this. She's like, she was an RA, and we're going to think about like our door. What do they call them?
The Vortex.
DoorDax!
Yeah.
DoorDax! Yes! DoorDax! Yes! I was like thinking about it because you had to have so many, and I was always like, I actually got stencils, and I like used this projector in our sorority basement, and so smart.
Yeah.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, if people want to message you, you obviously have such a genius in getting people in marginalized communities off the ground, giving them that stability, but you're also very good at the balance of 9 to 5s, starting a business. Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you?
Yes, I'm on Instagram, Tasia Clemons, just first and last name. And then I'm also on TikTok, Tasia Empowers. Literally.
Until it goes away, we'll see. Fingers crossed it doesn't.
I freaking hope.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Tasia. This was so fucking good. And I'm so excited for everyone to listen to this episode. This was very much needed. Reminded me, it took me back a little to the good old RA college days. It was needed.
Yes. Now I know if I bring up anything higher education RA life, I'm just going to be like, Ashley gets it.
Send it my way. All right. Thanks for coming on. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good week.